You are tuning into The Deal. I'm Danny Brown, and every week I interview the best real estate agents in the world and talk about seven-figure commissions, celebrity and high-profile clients, and the craziest real estate stories you could ever imagine. Enjoy this week's episode. Hey, Nicholas, good to see you, man.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
You're coming live from Atlanta, Georgia. Last time I think I hung out with you was at an event at Retreat a couple of years ago. Haven't seen you in a bit, but great to get you on The Deal. Welcome, and just wanted to jump right into it. You're one of the top agents in the Atlanta market. Why don't you tell us a little bit what's going on right now in the Atlanta housing market with the kind of price points you're dealing with and what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year. I think you may be aware. I get to see the spectrum of a lot of the price points because I have a team that sell as low as 250. My particular price point ends up being more in that luxury territory. But it's been an interesting year to say the least. The lower end of our market has been heavily impacted by the higher interest rates, and where interestingly at the beginning of the year we thought our luxury market was going to be extraordinarily slow. The first 2.5 quarters were actually very robust. There was a lot moving, a lot more than I thought was going to be moving. But I will say that as we've approached the election, things have come to a little bit of a screeching halt. So we've got seeming to get more days on market. Does the election really impact overall? You can argue one way or another, but I think it creates a lot of contemplation as far as, 60% of our luxury 60% of our luxury transactions are cash. So, are you affected by interest rates? Probably not as much. But it has definitely slowed our market. Interestingly, as rates have come down, our lower price point has started to become more robust. So now we're seeing more multiple contracts and a little bit more aggressive activity.
Yeah. So it's so similar when I talk to people in different big markets. We're tracking very similarly, with certain nuances in every market that are specific to the market. But overall, a lot of the fundamentals are very similar. We're all dealing with this pre-election sort of slowdown compounded by interest rates, although they eased up. Talk to me a little bit about some of the high-end markets and what are those areas that are, talk about the high-end markets in the Atlanta area and the suburbs around and what a typical house would trade for so we can give people an idea of that market.
Yeah, a little bit of a long-winded answer because interestingly, since COVID, so for years and years and years, we had two very distinct markets that we would reference as the ring road around Atlanta is 285. So you have inside the perimeter and outside the perimeter. 285 is that boundary. Prior to COVID, you would have said that all of our luxury markets were inside the perimeter, Tuxedo Park, Chastain, Brookhaven, so on and so forth. With the impetus of COVID and the work from home, we have a highway that runs very north of us called 400, and there's a lot of cities off of that, such as Roswell, Alpharetta, Cumming, and so on and so forth. And it is astonishing to me now that those markets have exploded, so in some instances more aggressively than in town, and have seen a much more elevated amount of appreciation, like a secondary market. So, Alpharetta now is trading houses in the $4 and $5 million range, which were just unheard of. Like that never was. So there's been some normalization about location and where our luxury is really at. I think the other thing that is driven is because people can now work from home, they can choose the better schools. So Alpharetta, Milton, Johns Creek, Crabapple, they all have the best schools. So people can now live there, work there, afford that bigger house and not have 4 private school educations.
Yeah.
So that's also driven a lot of people from in town to outside the perimeter.
That's, again, so many parallels. That's like the LA, people living in the South Bay, Redondo, Manhattan Beach, or going to Calabasas, Agoura, Hidden Hills, Westlake, better schools, but you're out. Here that's 30 to 45 minutes away. How far is that from Atlanta, the core Atlanta, if you're in one of these suburbs?
Same. So you're looking at
30-minute drive, 45-minute drive?
30 to 45 minutes, yeah.
Depends on traffic. Because Atlanta has that LA traffic, baby. I knew that when I went to Atlanta.
Nobody has LA traffic. Nobody
Well,
has
it's getting up there. It's getting close. So these areas where you're starting to see the multi-million dollar, $4 or $5 million homes are even they're 30, 45-minute drives out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
If this was 5 or 10 years ago, I got to think what were those prices less than half of that? I mean, those markets explode.
Less than half of that. I mean, but Danny, we're not just seeing 4 and 5 million. We're now starting to see estate homes being built and athletes moving in that direction and entertainers. I mean, there's transactions up there closer to 10 million, which just
that's mind
unheard of.
blowing. Mind
Yeah.
blowing. So
Yeah.
what are the top price points in the Atlanta, whether it's in the core or outside? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it what are we seeing out there?
20 is about your cat, really. And
Yeah.
for us, the highest ever on record is just a little over 20. There was a 35 million this year that we were all watching very closely. It was a big Tuxedo Park listing at 35,000 square feet. However, the seller was in hot water and he listed at 35 and ended up taking 17, which has been a bit of a comp killer for a lot of those luxury sellers. So but I would say we tap out at about 20. That's not to say though people aren't building residences that are more expensive than that. They just don't come along.
They haven't traded. So when you're talking about that $15 or $20 million home, what's an example? How much land? How big's the house? Just so people can have kind of compared to other markets.
Yeah, I mean, it varies greatly. I mean, obviously, outside the perimeter, you're going to get a lot of land with that. Inside the perimeter, you're going to get less. And, with the recent phenomenon, people aren't building the homes as big as they were, but they are putting more into their finishes. So I think, if you took a typical Tuxedo Park listing that was north of like 6-7 million, you're probably looking at somewhere between minimum 1.5 acres, but probably closer to a 2 to 3 acre lot. And those houses are probably somewhere in the vicinity of 20 to 25,000 square feet.
Oh, it's a massive house. 20,000. That is massive. And that's the 6, 7, 8, up to 10 plus. So imagine 15.
I would say that's their cost, right? But if you're trading at those on the market, you're probably bringing that square footage down more like a 12 to 15. But I think, people are building in that, and then that house is turning around and being worth 15 to 20 million.
Got it. Now, if you go out half an hour, 45 minutes, how much more land do you get? If you get 1.5 acres to 2 acres in the core for that 10, 12 million, what would you get? How much more land would you get?
I mean, you could get up to 30 or 40 million and still be under their budget. 30 or 40 acres still be under their budget.
Yeah. So you're getting acreage out there. That's the big difference.
If you want it, yes.
Yeah. And so, man, what is the biggest deal you've done lately or in general?
The biggest deal I did recently was a $7.5 million in-town transaction. It was listed for 8. We knew that was a little bit of a stretch. It was actually the 2023 Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles Christmas Show House, and we traded that in Q1 at around 7.5.
Awesome. That's a good sale. Was that the biggest sale your group's done?
No. We've done bigger than that, and we've got some really prestigious listings right now. We just listed a farm for 11. I'm very blessed. We just listed. Do you know who Bernie Marcus is?
I'm not sure. It sounds familiar.
So he's the 50% founder of Home Depot. So I'm actually sitting in his condominium right now. We just listed this for 5. I've got
Bernie, let's do a deal, Bernie. Come on, let's sell that. That's listed for 5.
I've got a $10 million new construction about to go live. So, we're getting very healthy listings at this point.
Yeah, so you're looking at some big commissions. What's some of the big commissions? 400,000 or 500,000 type of commissions on these big properties.
Yeah, because unlike other markets, we are generally at our price point, even as it moves up, we are a 6% commission market. So we're not moving down based on price point.
Yeah, so if you sell $15 million, do the math. And if you get both sides of it, that's a pretty getting close to a 7-figure commission. I love it. So Atlanta is just boom. Now let's switch gears in Atlanta. If we're talking now, I know Atlanta had some condos, some great condos. If you're not going to the high end and you just want a bread and butter, nice 2-bedroom condo, doesn't have to be the penthouse or the nice build. What's sort of your typical average or just above average nice condo so people can get a sense.
Probably 400 to 600,000, depending on
So it's
which
under a
building and where
million.
you're.
Yeah. So you don't
Yeah.
have to be a
Oh, yeah.
mega millionaire to buy in Atlanta. There
No,
are
no,
entry
no.
points at nice stuff that's below that. That's good to know. So it's not completely lost its mind like LA in New York.
You're
Just
not
sort
at
of.
all. Yeah.
Just sort of. All right. So talk to me a little bit about how you got into real estate. I know you didn't grow up in Atlanta with that beautiful accent. Talk to me about where you grew up and what brought you to Atlanta and what got you into real estate.
Well, so I was originally born in the United Kingdom. I moved here. This is the third time I've lived in the United States. I lived here as a child. I lived here in my 20s. I did my management training with the Ritz-Carlton Group, and then I moved back here in my early 30s.
Uh,
I very quickly moved to Atlanta from a place in Florida, and I was in a very different business. Actually, I was working in sales and marketing for land development companies. 2008, obviously the crash came, found myself gainfully unemployed, could not get anyone to take a look at my very good international resume, and really just had my back against the wall and decided to get my residential real estate license in 2009. 2009, May 2009, started in residential real estate, back against the wall. Dad was paying my mortgage.
Terrible.
I was
Yeah.
on Social Security. And we jumped right in with 2 feet. You know, if you told me I was going to take a commission only check, I would have told you you're crazy. But that's what happened, and business has been very, very good to us, and very fortunate. And things have just blown up as we went through that incubation period into the market.
That's awesome. So you came in right as the market was crashed, bottoming out, really difficult financial time for everybody, including yourself personally. And you dove into the deep end and started grinding. How long did it take before you felt like, okay, I've established myself. I have a consistent business. How many years did that take?
5 years.
Good 5 year battle.
Yeah, I
Woo.
mean, listen. No, I mean, I defied odds all the way. So the first year they told me that I would be absolutely the luckiest person alive if I managed to carve out $40,000 in my first year, and I did
Yes.
240,000 in my first year.
There you
So
go. Big
my
first year.
trajectory was good, but it was a constant battle. When I started seeing inbound business, inbound referrals, inbound phone calls, it would be year 5. But I will tell you, years 1 through 7 or 8, I was working 7 days a week, 8 till 10, every single day, grinding it out. So I put in
Yeah.
a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get that business to move.
You mean real estate doesn't come with a flexible part-time calendar? Is it a flexible, easy schedule?
Well, our competition believes so.
And so one of the biggest misnomers I always bring, and it always comes up, it's like, give me a break. Like if you have a real business, you are at it, especially when you're trying to build it, sustain it. Always, it's just always like that. All right, so talk to me a little bit about what your team looks like now, and what the business looks like now. Now, it's not just you're not just a one person team.
Yeah, so I did a big reorganization in COVID. I was getting a little disenamored with me, the business, just the dealings with the people. I think that was, at that point, that was year 10 or 11 of being in the business. And so I took a step back and said, listen, what do I like? If I'm going to stay in this business, what do I like about this business? And the
Sure.
two things I decided that I like, I do a lot of new construction and land development. So I said, I really like finding land, entitling land, and then developing that land. That's something I'm passionate about. And I really like luxury. So what I did is I reorganized the whole team. I brought in a sales director, 2 operations managers for 2 sides of the business. And then we have a new construction division, a new development division, a resale division. And now we launched a brand new luxury division. Our price point had moved where it was becoming apparent there was some dilution for our $4 and $5 million listings with our $250,000 townhouses that some of the team were generating. All business is great business, but we wanted to have a universe where they both lived and felt very exclusive of one another. And so now that's sort of where we find ourselves. Unfortunately, we've seen a little bit of attrition. We were at our peak at around 13, and now we're at 8 members as far as the team is concerned. But I think the attrition has been healthy. These are people who are not as successful as we would have liked for them to be, or they just really weren't connecting the dots, as we just said, or they really weren't willing to put in the hard work. So I think we're boiling down to the best producers that we have.
Yeah, and that's super common in our business, right? It's like 9 out of 10 people aren't going to be in the business 2 years after they get their license when they realize that it takes a 12, 14, 16 hour a day, 7-day a week grind for a sustained amount, a couple of years at least, to give yourself a chance. Most people are not willing to do that. And that's why, A, they're either out of the business or they become those floater agents, team to team to team to team to team, looking for the silver bullet. And the reality is there is no silver bullet. Yes, you can get lucky. You can get lucky, catch lightning in a bottle maybe once or twice. But the reality is there's no quick fix. There's no easy solution. It's a lot of work and it's dealing with a lot and thick skin and all these things. So tell me, in your setup, does everyone stay in their lane in terms of you have these divisions, or do people go back and forth? Like you have someone does a new development and they also do resale, or do you try to keep everyone in one of those
Generally,
lanes?
generally, we try to keep them in their lanes. They
Yeah,
are not prohibited for crossing lanes. Generally, we try to keep them, and they tend to. I'm an individual that can juggle 10,000 plates, and for many many years, I believed that I could teach people to do the same. And I found over time that that's not necessarily true. So to actually boil it down and get someone good,
yeah,
whether it be resale, new construction, new development, I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. They can have a singular focus, and it seems to work better. So structure has been good for us. They are still permitted, like if they get a bigger end listing and they want to bring that over to our Atlanta&Brown luxury division, they can certainly do that. And vice versa, if they bring a development, they can be cut into that development deal. So we encourage all business by all people, but we would rather them stay in the lane. Look, they'll come to me and say, "Hey, I've got a development opportunity for 50 homes." I'm like, "Good, good. How are you going to service it?"
yeah,
"Oh, I don't know." I'm like, "Well, you're going to need support and you're going to need a development team to be able to help manage it." "Well, I didn't think about that." "Are you willing to pay 50% of all of the costs?" "Oh, I didn't think about that."
yeah,
So the reality dawns in that, yeah, I've got this great opportunity, but I can't do any of my other business, and this is going to be really expensive. So, there's some education, but should they be rewarded for it? 100%. Absolutely. Yes. And
yeah.
we will always. We are really good at retention, loyalty from our people. That is for
Great.
sure.
And that's important. That's how you keep people around with it. That makes total sense. People can dive into a specific niche, become an expert, because as you know, there's so many nuances to all these things. The more you dedicate, the more you stay in your lane and dig deep, you're going to become that expert. And that's great. They have the platform on the team to go do any kind of business and bring in the experts who are best at that particular thing. So I love that you structure it that way. But talk to me some of the challenges that you have faced. You obviously had faced a lot of challenges when you started your career in a bad market, but now and over the last couple of years, being an agent, being a team leader, trying to train people, keep people. What are some of the challenges? And what are some of the things that you go, man, I hate this about real estate and what we do?
I mean, the number one thing I hate in our market about real estate is inspection reports, and I'm not really even joking. Just having to renegotiate the expectations of people over the years. It is probably my least favorite thing, but that's what keeps me up at night. Not the
You'll
10 million,
retrade.
right? Not the $10 million line of credit with the lender for the two developments we're working on. It's my inspection reports that keep me up at night, which is crazy. I think challenges wise, I think, early on, as I said a moment ago, I really thought it would be easy to go out and generate 20 necklaces. Here's a roadmap. This is what you should do. And this is what will happen if you do it. And that was a really, really difficult thing for me to get past because I'm like, I don't understand. I'm telling you how to do it. Why don't you go do it? You're telling me you want to go do it. Why don't you go do it? And so there was a period of time of reflection, which also was making me get a little bit discombobulated as far as the business is concerned. I think that's a very significant challenge. I think there has been some growth and trajectory challenges. As the market has shifted, at one point we were sitting on 8 developments that went down to 1 because they all got sold from underneath us. Now we're raising back up to another 7. So all of that business that we thought was going to come in the pipeline went away. Now it's coming back. And so there are challenges in how to forecast, the operations team, and the business itself and how that hierarchical structure is going to work. But I think the greatest challenge for me really has and I'm very good at it, but it has just been keeping consistent with the passion for the business. And I think the one thing I've done really well is, and I've been a little bit of a chameleon in saying, okay, well, I don't like this anymore. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm either going to delegate that to someone, or I'm going to say that that's no longer a big part of my business and that should go to the team. And that has helped tremendously in getting some of that stress and anxiety off my plate. But overall, I have to say that we haven't had that many challenges other than traditional market challenges, COVID challenges, et cetera, et cetera. But I think ultimately we've done really well by developing strong, solid relationships in the city. And we've always been very proud of the level of service and excellence that we've delivered. And that has helped us navigate some of these more difficult times and waters.
That's great. There's something in there. There's a lot of things, but I want to unpack something specific that you've glossed over, and I think it's brilliant, and it sounds so simple. Yet I know I've had challenges my whole 22, 23-year career delegating and giving stuff up. And you mentioned, you were talking because I asked you in a specific way, like, yeah, I've had some challenges delegating who's doing what, the stuff that you don't like or don't want to be doing. You've learned to find somebody on the team that will do it. And now it takes that stress and that feeling of, that anxiety that there's something there waiting for you that you don't want to do and you're putting it off. Rather than having that gnawing at you and your mental mindset all day, you're saying, okay, I got good people on my team I trust. They're happy. They like this. Let me delegate and trust that they're going to do it as good, if not better. And now I'm freed up to focus on what I do best, with developments, relationships. Like, that's so simple, yet so complicated to execute when you've been the CEO of your business for so long. And, being an agent and building an agent business, most of us were solo, doing everything, wearing every hat. So let's dig into that one piece that I'm just bringing up. How did you get to that point? Like, how does that look? Delegating to someone else, something that was like, you either didn't want to do it, you didn't have time to do it, whatever the case may be, but it's something that you're taking off your plate, and it's letting you be free to focus on better and bigger things for you. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think I'm an incredibly detail-oriented individual. And so for many of the early years, I had an extremely hard time in relinquishing control. And I would never consider myself someone who micromanaged, but I was so passionate that if something went terribly wrong, I was terribly upset. And that was not the best environment for the people that I was asking to help me along this journey. So I think I very quickly realized that, this is a very stressful job, but being out of control from an emotional perspective with your team is a terribly bad place to be. And I think you get out of control emotionally when you're overwhelmed. So there has to be this point of inflection where you say, I'm not being the best version of myself. In order to be the best version of myself, I can't keep doing the same thing that I'm doing every single day. So I think that was part of it. But I think that honestly, I can really actually tell you specifically where I made a change and when I decided that change had to occur, and I was okay with that change. So very early on in my career, I got into new construction, and that business grew for me, and it grew exponentially. And I rode that wave as the market recovered. And it went from, selling one house in 1 year to 2 to 10 to 16 to 20. And all of a sudden, I'm getting all of these developments.
So scaling, now major scaling.
I'm faced with, okay, how can I retain all of this commission and not give any of it away? And I was like, that's just not even a possibility. So it was at that point where I said, listen, I either create my resale business and go specifically all in on these developments, or I decide I'm going to win these developments, but I'm going to manage these developments. I'm going to bring a team in, and that's going to cost me money. And I had to get used to the fact that I was giving up a significant portion of commission in order to do that. But then I was like, you know what? Think about it. You're not giving up commission. You're adding more that you couldn't have managed under your umbrella. So now then when that happened for me, that's when I was like, okay, we need people in place. I can actually grow to be bigger than I ever would have thought I'd be if I'm willing to relinquish this part of it, if I'm willing to give that up. And that was the aha moment for me. And once I started 100%. To do it, I realized that you can grow way bigger under that sort of structure than you ever could as an individual agent.
Well, that is amazing the way you just articulated it. I can see it clearly, can understand it clearly. It's like, okay, you got to give away some to get a whole bunch more. Don't be so worried about holding on to 100% of the commission, because if you give away a chunk, you're not really giving it away. You're investing and you're scaling, and it ends up being that you're getting more back in the long term,
Correct.
and sometimes multiples. So that's really an incredible way of explaining how you scale as a real estate agent. And people do it in different ways. You did it with development. I mean, development, if you're doing well at it, it can scale pretty quickly because there's so many units in a project, and boom, boom, boom. That's fantastic. I love how you explain that.
It's also a really good investment model for agents. I will tell you that my trajectory of growth from a financial perspective, and from getting my home where I needed to be, and being a safe shelter from a finances perspective, these development deals offered me significant investment opportunities that bolstered my income as well. So that was huge.
Your own investments that you're like, hey, I'm putting money into these deals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was huge as well.
And that's another great, give me your take on that. It sounds like you're obviously a big believer in, invest in real estate opportunities if you can.
Well, I was late. Large income was late to come to me. Let's say mid-30s, right? As I'm moving into this world, mid to late 30s. So I didn't have a lot of savings. In fact, I had zero savings because my father was paying my mortgage. So as this money started to trickle in, I would look at it and I'm like, I don't really, the real estate, the traditional stock markets was just boring for me. I'm like, okay, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, like this. The returns are just so boring unless you're whacking just all of this money into it, and then it's just in a risk position. So as I started to invest with builders on new construction deals, I was like, oh my God, the return on this is in some instances 50 to 75% on the money. And I'm like, incredible. This makes a lot more sense. So then that just, as my career in new construction grew, so did my investment career. And then I was the general partner in a 28 townhouse deal, a 23 single family deal. And so they just became bigger deals. And now it's scaled back a little bit, but now I'm ramping back up into those investments as I get more confident in the market. But I think that is a tremendous, if you have, and I will caveat, there had to be a day where I said, I'm willing to lose this money. Yes. You cannot make these investments unless you're willing to lose the money. And I've done extraordinarily well by luck of the gods. And I think we've lost money on one deal in the last 15 years. So it's just been a very, very fortunate. And now I'm more capable of reading the market. So I'm a little bit more sensitive to overpaying for land, overpaying on costs, and so on and so forth, and just really making sure we underwrite those deals. But I'm still investing today, and I think I'll still invest to the day I die.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, one important thing, there's many things, but you mentioned this. If you're investing, you got to know that you got to be prepared to lose that money. And if you're not in a position where you're not paying your bills and you can't afford your basics, you shouldn't be investing in real estate deals. You got to wait. And it's hard because everyone wants to race to get financial freedom, and it's a challenge. And but you got to really be careful with that. But it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying your general partner, it sounds like you've become a developer, not just putting some money into a deal or buying something early. Am I hearing that right? Like you've actually gotten to the point where you're entitling and becoming a general partner and finding investors and all that kind of complicated development stuff.
Yeah, that's very true. And a lot of the investors we bring to the table, their first question is are you in the deal? And if I say yes, they're right into that deal. Obviously, that has become very choppy over the last 24 to 36 months. But I think we're moving out of that as we see rates
the market.
A lot of people are going to deploy capital. So my phone will start ringing again. It's just a traditional cycle.
Got it. So you've become a developer. And are you condos or homes or both?
Single family and townhouses they've been the predominant focus.
That's fantastic. And look, again, that's like, if you're optimizing what we do, getting into real estate investment is the way to go. And I'm constantly looking and reminding myself to try to get more involved, because we see deals and we're in the trenches, and like, if you can do it, get it in some way, but know there are risks, and know that, don't get in until you're ready. You got to be willing to lose some money. So talk to me about some of the fun stuff or craziest stuff you've ever experienced in your career in this hot Atlanta market. whether it's good, bad, or ugly, any of the above, anything you're allowed to share. You don't have to name any
I mean,
names.
I can share this, but I think I will tell it as unrisque as I possibly can. But I was
The PG
very,
version.
very, but yeah, very early on in my career, I was working for a bigger agent in the city. I was on his team, and he happened to be out of town. And he said to me, "Hey, listen, this new construction house is closing. I need you to swing by there, grab the lockbox off the door. And of course, it's a new construction home. It's a combo lockbox, so it isn't a super lockbox. So everyone sort of has access to it. And as I get to
Yeah.
the house, I walk up to
Uh,
the door and I'm like, oh, that's weird. The combo, and I'm so green. It's not even funny. So the combo lockbox is open. So I'm like, I open
oh.
up the door and I'm like, hello. I announce myself and nobody responded. And so
Oh
then I'm
no.
walking through the house. I'm like, is someone burglaring? Like, what's going on? So the couple who were buying this house were on the counter in the kitchen in the
Ah,
middle of toilets. And I sort of backed myself out. I went back.
they weren't cooking barbecue.
I called him and I said, I can't get the key. Call me back. I went to the closing and I had to sit opposite these people, knowing I just watched what they were doing. It was just,
Yeah.
uh,
A day in the life of Atlanta real estate. That's hilarious. We should all have one of those in our
well,
memory
I've got
banks.
two or three of those bloody things. I mean,
Yeah, I mean
oh,
that could be traumatic. And talk to me a little bit about some of the Atlanta, some of the high profile people. You got a ton of rappers and athletes, and entertainers. What are some of the high profile people that you could share that you've come across or worked with?
I mean, I will just talk high level. I mean, we're very, very fortunate to have a lot of entertainment business, a lot of athletes. We've got four major um, sporting teams here, so we have a lot of that. I will say that is a very challenged buyer or seller in a lot of instances. It is not my favorite marketplace, and mostly because you just have a lot of opinions. You've got a mom involved, a manager involved,
Oh
a
yeah,
player or an entertainer involved, a wife involved, maybe the kids are involved, and it's just a challenge transaction. So it's very glamorous. Hey, I sold Usher a house, or I'm working with Akon, or whatever it may be. But I will tell you, 9 times out of 10, it is a problematic challenge. So what we are very fortunate, and as my career has moved, is we have a lot of high net worth individuals. We have a lot of Fortune 1, Fortune 5. We've got CEOs from Coke and UPS, and we've got a lot of big name CEOs that live in this city. So
yeah.
that has been very good for business. I mean, a lot of high net worth individuals. There's more money. I mean, I scratch my head sometimes as to where the money comes from. People are a little bit more humble and quiet about it because it is the South and not as gregarious. But you can see it in these houses and how they live. But yeah, it's become, in the years that I've lived here, this city has become way more multicultural. I mean, I think the last count we've got around 250,000 expats that live here. Our restaurant scene has just exploded. Our populace grows every year. Our price point moves up every year. So, I think when I first started in the business, we were considered that sleepy town down in the South that no one knew
No
much
more.
about. But with what has happened with Hartsfield and the airport and the businesses that have moved here, I think that's no longer the case. And I think we're very fortunate. I think we're still at our early trajectory as far as price point is concerned, although they'll say that we're one of the more expensive cities in the country right now. I don't know if I agree with that. I think we've got a lot of growth left in us.
Wow. I mean, you're already seeing the 10 to 15 to 20 market. There's a lot of growth. There's only a few markets above that. The Miamis, the New Yorks, the LAs, the San Francisco areas, and Palo Alto. That's bananas, but that's what's happening. Talk to me about some of these Atlanta hotspots. If we're coming to visit and you're taking me out, what are some of the dinner? What are some? I know there's so many. What are some great restaurants or hotspots that you'd say, hey, you got to check this out?
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, what I will say to you is our restaurant scene is fantastic. I mean, if you want fine dining, if you want the best sushi, if you want good Italian, you want good steak, we've got options across all the boards. What I like about our city is that we have all of these neighborhoods, right? So I can take you over to Ponce Highland, I can take you to Morningside, Virginia Highland, Hansley Park, or we can go to Midtown, we can go to Buckhead, we can go outside the perimeter up to Avalon. We've got all these choices of destinations that you can go, and different restaurateurs have moved into these. And
So
this
many
neighborhood,
options.
yeah, this restaurant's a little, this restaurant scene over here is a little bit more granola, and you've got those young upstarts that are just moving into the business. Then we've got really established restaurateurs like Ford Fry, and he has some of the best. I mean, you cannot go wrong at a Ford Fry restaurant, and they're always
Yes.
spectacular. But the other thing I think we have here that from an amenities perspective, which is fun, is we've got the Beltline. We're an hour from several lakes. We're an hour and a bit from the mountains. There's lots of things you can do in the city. Again, all the sporting events. So you can sit at home and watch TV all weekend, or you can get out there and really enjoy this city. And it doesn't have to be restaurants. We've got. I had a friend come into town recently, and they were like, "Oh my god, I didn't realize you had this kind of." Atlanta's pretty cool. Like, look, I didn't think so. I think they just think it's backcountry.
Yeah, Atlanta's very cool. I mean, like you said, there's so many vibes and flavors and all these little submarkets and little pockets, and it's you can find anything.
Yeah,
From the
for sure.
finest, hippest, coolest to the most, probably the fun down. There probably is the old school stuff too, right? The barbecue, the southern play, which is what I love. I love the
Absolutely.
authentic old school that's been there 100 years. That's fun. It's definitely.
We've got institutional restaurants here that have been around for 25 years. You Soto, still one of the best Italian restaurants in
Yeah.
town. Murphy's in Virginia Highland for brunch, best spot. Like, these restaurants have been around for 25 years, and they're just consistently good because they do a small menu and they do it consistently well.
Love it. Love it. All right. Any advice you would give real estate agents, whether they're starting out, whether they're established, any words of wisdom? You can take the stage and take it anywhere you want. You've dropped a lot of gems and wisdom throughout this conversation. But if there's anything you want to leave us with, the stage and mic is yours.
I think, honestly, what I would say to that question is, I think that, like anything else in life, if you wish to be successful, you have to be very, very deliberate about your actions, and you have to be very, very consistent. This business does not allow for you to look at it as a part-time venture. Can you be successful at that? I would argue not. If you really look at me
Agreed.
and say, I want to move into luxury, or I want to do this volume a year, you have to be serious about your business. One of the things I say to my team all the time is, I can give you the map. I can tell you what to do. I can tell you how many phone calls. I can tell you who you need to be hanging out with. I can tell you where you need to be seen. But if you don't do it, it won't happen. And I think a lot of people believe that it's just going to fall at their feet. So I think always be deliberate and always be consistent. And if you do those two things and you do it for a period of time, that is more than 24 months, probably less than 72 months. I think you will look up and find yourself with a business that you will be proud of.
Nicholas, you're dropping knowledge on us. But yeah, agreed 1000%. It is not a part-time, half-ass career. And I think you got to give it your all for years to try to come up with some sort of business. And another disclaimer, as far as I know, we are not related. You are not brother from
We're
another
not
brother.
related. We're not related. There's just one or two of us around.
There's only a few. There's only a few of us. But am I going to see you in Charleston? Is that
Yes,
how you go?
yes, we're going to pop in. Yes, we are.
All right.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll catch up there and maybe grab a meal or a cocktail. But thank you for sharing with us, man. It's awesome to catch up. Atlanta is just an incredible real estate story as it's become one of the most important and biggest cities, not just in the South, but in the country. So hopefully I'll see you either there or Charleston soon. All right. Good to see you, man. Take care, Nicholas. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you like what you heard and you love real estate as much as we do, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review and a comment. That would help our ratings so much. If you want to hear more episodes, you can go to The Deal with Danny Brown on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, or anywhere else you consume your podcasts.